Shelly Beaird-Francois, candidate for County Council District 2
Yes.
here in Frederick County. Shelly, thank you so much for doing this.
Not a problem.
I'm going to put this right in front of you there.
Not a problem. My pleasure.
What's your passion?
You know, I think it would be family first, politics second, and traveling third.
Okay.
Those are my passions.
Dive in.
Dive in.
Yeah, family.
Family. I'm married. I have one daughter who's right now living out of the country, and she has two daughters. Funny, I just went on a trip to Japan, to Osaka and to Tokyo, and I just saw like my granddaughter for the first time, but they live around on the other side of the world. So, it was nice to spend a few days just
business or
talking with them.
military? Why are they in Japan?
It's government.
Okay.
It's government. It's one of those. Yeah.
The one of the things that's just most amazing about Japan and the Japanese culture is not just the fact.
Wait a minute.
that,
Wait. They're not actually in Japan. They met me in Japan.
Oh, okay.
They are in Bangkok, Thailand.
Oh, okay.
And Thailand, but yeah, it's still.
Well, I'm still going to make my point,
Exactly.
which is that there's this concept, and I'm not even going to try to say the word because I don't want to butcher it, but about that the goal is not to perfect something or to be the best at it. The goal is to be better than you were yesterday, to constantly improve just over time.
Right.
And so you have a carpenter, and the carpenter is not to make the best chair that's ever been made. It's to make a better chair than they've ever made before, and to improve and improve. And just as an identity and an idea, I love that idea. So anyway,
Right.
but that's incredible.
Speaking of too, it's like also you can always expect perfection.
Yeah.
Because sometimes taking risks and doing things that you may not do anything perfect, but it doesn't mean that you haven't learned something and you know how to go back and use that, in the future. So, yeah.
100%, yes. It is the striving for that sometimes to me is, it damages not just the outcome, because again, you're never going to hit perfect, right?
Right, exactly.
You don't want to aim too low.
Right, no.
But you want to have some kind of honesty with yourself on your capacity.
But also that you have to have that passion or that fear to try something that somebody hasn't had, to do it someplace differently. Because that's where the greatest achievements are made, come from, the possibility that you can make a bad mistake on this.
1,000%, yeah. Okay, so then you said the next was politics.
Politics.
So what do you do in politics, Shelly?
What I do in politics, I am currently on the Central Committee. I am a past president of the Women's Democratic League of Frederick County. I volunteer, somewhere between, I would say, in heavy seasons like the season that we're getting ready to in politics, somewhere between 30 to 50 hours a month just on political things, and that's in addition to having a full-time job. So
you're bored, Shelly, is what you're saying.
Never bored.
So how did you get into politics? Why
Okay,
politics?
so I have two bursts into politics, into politics. So when I was young, my grandmother was very involved with the Unity Democratic Club in Brooklyn, New York. And that is the same club where Shirley Chisholm originated. So my early life was spent a lot of volunteering, stuffing envelopes, going to motorcades around to different areas, talking about candidates. I even was involved at one point of helping the kids. Like they figured at that center that, well, if the kids come in, you might want to occupy the kids so that the parents can talk politics and do the stuff that they need to get done. So I was involved in helping find activities for the children to do, coming up with parties for them at Christmas time and different times of the year, so you can invite them all in, because once you get the kids in, you can get the parents in. So I did that in my early life, and then I stopped doing politics for a long time, except for occasional events, galas, and stuff like that I would still go. 'Cause like I said, it was funny. My grandmother was like a 4 foot 11.5-inch woman, and she was actually a cafeteria worker in the schools. But, all I can remember is I got to go to Albany to do this. I got to go to Albany to do this. So that was that was her real job, but she spent a lot of times in politics and stuff. So you grow up with that background of people caring you want it, So, yeah. Like I said, then I stopped, moved down here, and got involved. And then, I'm going to say how it really happened was I was, this is how you know that you start to become, you're ranking up to being passion again for it. It's like, we had a group that we used to hang out at a certain bar and restaurant
Yeah.
in Frederick. And, they were coming up with things, I'm like, and I'm like, not screaming and yelling at people. I'm like, people are not crossing, Mexico with a child on each hip, something like that. And you're like, wait a minute. Why am I bothering with these people? I need to be out and show this passion and get to work. So then I came back to politics. I started with the Women's Democratic League and then got more involved, ended up being on the Central Committee, but not an elected position. And in 2022, I was elected to the Central Committee. And I was with the WDL until I'm still with them. I'm still on the executive board, but I stepped down from being president, I think, last November or so.
So let's go back to that first time you were involved in politics, because so many of us, whether it was, go back in the generations, and it was you kind of became whatever your father was, right? Or your mother was, and so certainly that's not the case anymore. You don't have to. If your father's a tailor, that doesn't mean you have to be a tailor, right? But there has to be. You get a lot of what. Maybe kind of what you think is important in life, right? Your priorities in the world from who raised you.
Right.
And so it had to have been something powerful, because you're talking, I don't want to age you or anything, but obviously we're talking about, the 70s, 80s period of time.
Right.
Which is obviously very different than we are politically. And so it had to be very impactful to watch your grandmother, who grew up from, I'm assuming, the turn of the century right? How different her life when she was a child and growing up.
Right, exactly.
To be so invested in changing the world.
Right.
That had to have been a big impact.
It was a big impact. And then it's kind of like, then you're around people because at some point, I was very young, but meeting Shirley Chisholm, and working in the same organization, same club that she was out of, so having great people around you, I think influences you at an early age. When I was telling my cousin, I'm like, I'm running for it, and she's like, your grandmother would be so proud, and so would Aunt Shirley, so it's like, yeah.
It is sometimes I'm in scenarios where people go, well, I'm not very political, or I'm not, that's not political. And I'm always, that is such privilege, because that is not the situation that most people find themselves in. And they wake up in the morning and it is political, just the fact that they exist.
Like I said, and it's a different world. Some of the young people now, I think they can't envision the time that we might have been actually friendly with Republicans, but it was a whole different environment that we're coming in. And now it's like, it's to your detriment not to be involved in politics. If you see what's happening and going on in the country, and if you're not outraged or, one of the reasons when I first, started, I was like, am I the only one, or something like that? And when you join an organization like the WDL, or you just get involved in politics or in any kind of group where you're talking to like-minded individuals, you feel like, okay, other people are fighting this too. It's not just me, and and that gives you comfort. So I could tell anybody, like, yes, get involved, just so that you're not the only one, that other people are seeing this too. And at this point in the history of our country, we have to do everything we can to turn things around.
I think that it is, the labels may change. Parties may change, who's a part of what club may change, but to me, there's still, it's still the same fight, which is people that look at the world that is around us, and they think, I think the world could be better for everybody.
Right.
And some people that look at the world around us and say, well, as long as it's worse for them, as long as it's worse for the other, as long as it's worse for a person that doesn't look like me or sound like me, or somebody grew up somewhere I didn't grow up, or they're an immigrant, or as long as it's worse for them, I'm okay.
Yeah, that's
and I think that is that's the battle we've been fighting the entire time.
Right, you're absolutely right.
And in my opinion, a lot of the people that believe that way are inside of the Trump administration and the Republican Party, and now, and so there is some labels that I don't want to put on you, but that I put onto people. But it's still, to me, that is the progressive, conservative, liberal, conservative tipping point. Is, do you think that we could make the world better for everybody, regardless of who they are? And that's what I'm sure that your grandmother believed was, let's work on this together.
Right. I'm gonna say, and then it's like my grandmother was too, but she was like a second generation. My grandfather was born in Barbados, and so was my father in Barbados. So I'm an immigrant. I'm a child of an immigrant. And you figure like these families have went through so much to get here because they wanted a better life for their children, as I was saying to the same group that I was talking about, and I was like, we're a country that's built on immigrants. And I go, what makes you any better than anybody else that you got here first? But the other people don't serve their same right to try to have a better life for their families. So.
That is, but fascism, this regressive philosophy requires another. There has to be an out group, and it just happens to be, and probably often immigrants are used as this, but it just happens to be the most, the transgender community is another one right now that it's just they're the out group, and you have such a tiny, like, part of it is post-truth. Like, we don't really have the same set of facts anymore.
Right.
We don't agree that the sky is blue and that the sun is yellow or orange or whatever.
Right.
We don't agree on that, and so it's. I guess what I'm saying is it's tribalism. That it's tribes.
It is tribalism,
right?
And it's funny, like, but you think, okay, it's not not a new thing. And it's like I had a teacher, one of the greatest teachers that I had, and he was like, he goes, you have a neighborhood that's near the docks, and people come in on a boat and they settle first in the neighborhood by the docks. Eventually they grow, they get a little educated, they get more training, and that group moves out, and the next group comes in. But when the first group was there, they, you get to the point where you're exceeding enough, and you're like, well, I don't want to clean toilets, and I don't want to scrub pipes or whatever, scrub dishes anymore. So you're getting out. But then, like, as that they're moving out, and other people are moving in, but then you get mad at them, like they're moving in, they're trying to take my business. So it's like those darn Irishmen, those darn Italians, they're coming in, and it's the natural progression that as people move up, you say what you don't want to do anymore, but now a group comes in and they're willing to do what you won't do. You take issue with that.
But we are only here because of that, right?
Exactly.
I mean, we are a nation that is entirely built by immigrants, and so I'm not an immigrant. My father's not an immigrant, but 2 generations past,
right? Exactly.
They are, right?
Exactly.
And so it just happens that we did it last century and not this century.
Right. Yeah.
And to me, there is it is very sad that I thought. And I'm certain it had to do with my education. It had to do with the bubble that I was raised in. But I just, as a young person, I just thought we're past all this. That we are, we're a nation and we're together and we're striving on and we're gonna get things done. And I know that there's still pockets of it and there's places where, you got to be careful and but that we as a people are past this. And it turns out we're not.
We're not. Some people, I would always say, hid themselves very well.
Yeah.
But
when it was kind of socially expedient.
Right.
Too.
Socially expedient, and you knew you looked down, but a certain person came into power, and it's like, oh, it's fine to show your true self, and people are showing that. As sad as it is, but.
Do you think we're too far gone? Do you think Trump broke it?
We can't ever think that we're too far gone because. You got to stand up and you got to do something about it. It was not fun. Well, not funny. Yeah. I a couple of years ago, about 2 years ago, I got diagnosed with breast cancer. And, and I'm used to being out in the street. It's funny, like around politics and political events, they usually go, Shelly, you are everywhere because I go to everything. I show up, But then I was faced with breast cancer. So I went and I had the lumpectomy. And then I had to go through 22 rounds of radiation therapy.
Whoa.
And I would go through the radiation therapy. First I was going in the morning. Sometimes it was after in the evenings. And I said I had to drive all the way to, I was going out of Shady Grove just because my doctors were aligned with Shady Grove. And then I had to go all the way over to Silver Spring to have my treatments. And I would drive over to my treatments and I would, have the radiation and then get back in the car and I'm zooming down the road again so I can get to a meeting or WDM meeting or, Democratic meeting. And then I remember during the presidency, I thought we really had a chance, because the voices we seemed to think people get it. They're following, they understand, something like that. And then when I woke up, well, like, you got a big hint the night before that things weren't going well, but you woke up, and I was thinking, like, before this to myself, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to get through, Kamala's going to get elected, and then maybe I can rest, you know. And then you woke up and you're like, no, you can't rest. And you know what? And it's like, yeah, I'm in pain. I'm in something, you got a little bit of pain, something here, but you know what? I got to dust off and get back out there because it's too much at stake. So people have to, you have to believe you can change something or make something better. If we don't, we're lost. This is the time we can still grab it and do something. Like I said, when you talk about so many rights that you thought we had and how this nation was progressing, and feel it all get sucked right back out, to the back centuries, to the point of like, this is what your parents fought for and you having to fight this again, but you can't give up. You have to stay in tune. Like I said, talk to people that are like-minded about you, organized. One thing I can see that really helps me is when you go out to these rallies that we're having here and you see the amount of people from where it started to how it's building, and you're hoping many more people get the idea. I said about the election, I said is that the people that were positive were so positive, I think they drowned out for us the people that had issues, so we got to learn a different way of listening.
So thank you for that segue, because to listening, there are so many things that happen, especially here locally, that have such a greater effect on us than ever the people that the President of the United States. I mean, certainly exactly. The President can go to war. I'm assuming the county council can't go to war, right?
No, we can't.
But land use decisions and taxing decisions and contracts that are written and all these things, these have a much greater impact on our lives. But it seems like people are, I'm gonna use the word, much more ignorant of the local, right? That they're and I don't mean it in a negative way, but
but I know what you mean.
They don't know about the land use decision. They have an opinion that they formed because
they watch TV.
MSNBC
they watch TV,
and
exactly.
CNN and Fox News has talked about the war, but they don't really have an opinion about whether or not we should add 30% affordable housing to this new neighborhood or 60%, et cetera.
Right.
Just making these numbers up.
Yep.
How do we get people to pay attention closer to themselves and the city and the county and the state?
You got to get out there and tell them again. The funny part is that people expect you to come to them, and it's hard to find, looking out, it's hard to find those needles in the haystacks of people that are really interested. Yeah. So we also need you to come to us and to learn what's happening. And, but it's more communication. It's more getting out in the communities. Some of my best conversations have been with people on the way back from the rallies when they're asking me about things. And, you're walking down the street and you're just talking to people, hand in hand. And, that's kind of what I do. I go as far as, you haven't asked me, but as far as like my work background.
Yeah.
So I was, so I'll start with my education. My undergraduate degree is in biological oceanography.
Okay.
My graduate degree is in business and policy studies with a concentration in marketing. I've worked, over the course of my life, I worked for such companies as the New York Aquarium in New York. I've worked for Marvel Comics. I've worked with 2 unions. I worked for the National Education Association Member Benefits Department. I've worked for Union Privilege, which is the benefit organization for all the AFL-CIO unions. And, and I go, and then I've done my politics, which I've talked about before. But I said, what is the thing about all those jobs that kind of link? And it's really dealing with people, being there for people, being there for members, constituent services. When people have a problem, like one of the things in my job, my current job, and I have been able to do, is like if there's a bad flooding or something like that, I can go to the credit card company that I work with or the insurance companies that I work with, and I can be like, hey, we got to do something for our members. Can we get a grace period, a holiday where they don't have to worry about paying you things? But it's, and then also like in my job, it's like, you have your normal stuff that you need to do. But when somebody picks up the phone and calls you or calls your call center and saying, hey, I'm having a problem with the credit card, or I'm having a problem with insurance, that you step in and get in there and be their advocates. So I think that's what all my job and also my political things are, just being an advocate for people and getting out and help people.
And that listening part of it is
Right,
really
listening.
is so important to understand, what is salient, what is actually going on. I do worry a little bit, and I know that during these conversations I keep bringing this up, that I do worry a little bit that we are, as a people, so addicted to, stuck in our phones and screens and these little hits of dopamine that come in. And
wait, and can I add reality TV?
And
too?
reality TV,
But anyway, yes,
yeah.
yes.
I'll tell you. Listen, in 2016, I've never really been a trash TV watcher, but I know the names of the shows, but I've never seen them. But in 2016, I was reading something that said that Keeping Up with the Kardashians was the #1 show on television. This was like, I don't know, May, June, or July of 2016. And I said, oh, Trump's going to win. That if we as the American people, if the thing that we are spending our time doing is watching people who are just famous to be famous,
right, and have done absolutely nothing.
I know nothing about them, right?
Right.
But the fact that that's what we're choosing to spend hours a week to do.
Some of these other programs, it's like mothers are sitting there with their children next to them.
Yeah.
Like, is this how you want to show? This is how you want them to see how girls behave or children behave? Like, are you kidding me?
You don't want your kid to be on your screen, but you're sitting on the couch on your phone going, hey, get off your screen. That
right,
kind of thing.
Exactly.
So I am a little bit worried that that is so addictive. It's designed by scientists at MIT and stuff that went through this, and now the corporations have them working for them, designed to keep your attention, right?
Right.
And it is trading on little things in our brain that we don't even know about, and that's why the colors are certain colors, and that's why it's a TikTok that's a certain number of seconds has exponentially more attention on this. I worry a little bit that our attention spans are too short, that we are too easily, whatever's the shiniest thing is what is kind of pushing our perspective. And this then introduces the idea, and this is not in the conspiracy theory world, but because I know 100% that we do this ourselves, other countries, but where countries are injecting into our conversations, right? So there's Facebook bots and agents and stuff that are in there going, hey, and I know that there was a I think it was in South Carolina, like they set up a Black Lives Matter rally and a white nationalist rally, and they organized them to happen at the same time. But nobody in the organizations was American. Was lived here. It was all foreign agents trying to create this crime. Right. And so my worry is that the shiny light, we're the cat following the.
And it's like, and what gets me about shows like that is like, you're watching people live their lives, but you're not going to go out and try to live your life. I'm like, yes, you're not going to be invited to the Met Gala, and you're not going to do all of that. But God, live your life. I go, I said, when I get called in front of my maker someday, I said, I want him to I said, it's been a good life, and I've, enjoyed it. And like, no, I didn't go, to the south of France. Well, I might still go there, but you know what I mean? Like, what I mean? But go out and live your life and stop watching this.
100%.
Because it doesn't make any sense to put money in the Kardashians' pocket. Why?
So in that environment where that is the reality, right? Is that reality TV and TikTok and all that? How will you cut through the noise? So if you're elected to represent us, to be our council member, right? How will you beat that?
Well, you got two ways. You can get in there and you can do a reality political show. No, just joking.
Are you soft launching
like I said,
a reality TV, Frederick County?
And I have said this to Democratic leaders too. It's like, you've got to get out there and you got to show them and tell them what you're doing and tell them, and hopefully enough people will start listening. In some ways it's like your life should be more important than a reality show. So you've got to, turn around, but you got to convince them to turn around. And it's just getting out, getting out as many things, people seeing you, but it can't be just me, and not just on a local level. I mean, yes, we need all of that too, but you need a national, national level. People want to see us doing something.
Yeah. I agree that there is a lot of disappointment, right, with not just the political parties and politicians. I mean, it's like Congress has like a 2% approval rating or something.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Doesn't matter where you are in the political
Right.
spectrum, you're upset that it doesn't feel like people are making decisions that benefit us. But then when people do, right, so people make changes or they try to bring in more people, or we have to grow, and so we got to build more. Well, then people, like we talked about earlier, people get real not in my backyard about it, right? And they're trying to pull that ladder. As soon as they got up on top of they're trying to pull the ladder up behind them.
Right.
I guess I'll say it like this. Frederick's growing, right? People want to live here. This is
People excited about
people
living
are
here.
excited about it. They love the community. All those. Is it? Are we growing too fast? Are we not? You know what I mean? Because to me, they're coming. The people are showing up.
Well, as I always say, I'm like, when you look at it,
I apologize.
Sorry.
I'm going to move this a little bit closer.
I said when you take a look at it, people can't afford Montgomery County and D.C. anymore, and they're moving north. And Frederick is. It's beautiful. When you look at it, we are progressive, and all that stuff, and it's a place to settle. So we're only going to keep getting more and more people in. One of the things is that before we, we get more and more people in, but we got to make sure we have the infrastructure in place, the roads, the schooling and stuff to handle it.
So what do you say to the people?
Also with an eye on keeping our green space, because this is what makes Frederick different. Like we can't get so congested that we don't have our green space and our enjoy and areas.
But what
to
do you
enjoy.
say to the people that say no? I don't want anything more. Again, the people that most likely moved from Montgomery County in their lives, or their parents did, right?
Right, exactly.
What do you when you're knocking doors or you're at these political events? Like, what do you say to people about that are like they're so against the growth that is to me feels inevitable.
Right, and exactly. I think I tell them, like, it's inevitable. They're coming. We got to be prepared. Like I said, we're going to make sure we keep as much of ourselves as possible. But the growth is coming, and it has to come because it's just getting worse and worse in those counties, down counties. That they're coming here. So and the people that'll be leaving here will be moving further north. They're heading for they're heading for the Pennsylvania border probably.
Yeah,
it's sad and scary, but it's true.
So many people that work in Frederick County they live in Washington County. They live across the border in Pennsylvania.
Right. And now also that you're getting people from other states again, that they're hearing about Frederick County as a place to go. And they're coming from everywhere from us because we are very progressive and we support people. So that's only going to increase it. So I don't think there's a way to stop it.
Yeah.
We just have to tailor it better.
I think I agree with you that we're not going to stop it. But talk about that tailoring a little bit. So one of the things that I've preached a lot about is that we need better transit. I love transit. Transit's free. It's free. Tell everybody it's free in Frederick County.
Wait
it's
a minute.
an awesome thing.
And the buses.
The
buses. The buses in Frederick
correct.
County.
Yeah,
right?
the transit buses are free in Frederick County.
Yes, they
People
are.
don't know about that, which is amazing. But we don't have enough of them, right? And this is not the fault of transit. This is the fault of funding.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
If we had $1 billion more,
right,
we'd have a bunch more buses.
Right.
So there seems to be a lot of investment in automobile infrastructure. So this is parking decks and parking lots, and they're talking about. I know one of the Republican congressional candidates has a big sign, widen 270, right? So they want to spend billions of dollars giving us another lane on 270. My perspective is we should spend that same money building mass transit, building train lines or bus lines, things like that. and I don't, your kids I think are a little older, so
Well, I have one child and yet. But I'm gonna say.
I mean, they're not a teenager anymore.
Yeah, she's not.
Okay.
She's not a teenager anymore.
So the teenagers today, I don't have many conversations with them, but the ones I do,
right.
It seems to me they don't care about driving the way that I did growing up and thinking about it. Are we there yet? Should the county be, I'm not saying stop taking care of roads but I mean, should our infrastructure focus shift?
Towards mass transportation?
Towards buses, towards rail lines.
All right, so I'm going to, when you was talking about this, during the course of my career, I've worked in D.C. for probably like 10 to 15 years.
Wow.
So I did the commute from Frederick. I did the commute first from Germantown. I lived in Germantown first, and then from Frederick. So at one point, I used to get up at 4:45 in the morning to start getting dressed. Whew. So that I could be out of the house at a little bit before 6, so I could meet the 6:11 train at Monocacy Station to go down to Union Station, and then still having to get on Metro for a couple of stops or something like. And I did that on a regular basis.
So you're getting up at 4:30, and you're getting to work at,
say, maybe about 8:30, 8:20. Yeah. You're getting there, so it's like sometimes a 2.5, but a 2:22.
Yeah.
And that was on a good day. On certain days, it could be even worse. When you get to the point when you're doing that driving, it's like nobody wants to do that driving anymore. So, at least with the MARC train, you could drive to, Monocacy, which was a short drive, get on the train. If somebody used to go, like, they go with me, they go, Monday, you're all up, and something, they go by Friday, you get in the train, and you're like, because you're just exhausted. So you look at it, that way. So you need, like I said, when you do all those hours driving, you don't want to be in a car driving. Yeah. You want to be on mass transportation to help you. There's no way around it. Was I going to say, and then I had to start because I'm like, there's only 3 trains, MARC trains, that come up here into Frederick, but then it's like you got Point of Rocks, I think they may have six trains. And if you go to Germantown, you get like all use of 9 trains, So then I was like, okay, well, maybe I won't catch it at Monocacy because, things happen, especially like I was on a central committee too. So I'm like, I got to get to events and stuff like that. So I'm like, all right, so I'm going to drive down to Germantown every day. So I did that for a while. All I were like, or go to Point of Rocks, So that's why you need the cars, just to get to different areas. But then, like I said, when you talk about these commutes, and sometimes young people don't know, and honestly, I think they, unlike our generation, are more attached to cars and stuff, to going, to doing that. And and then I was like, when you talk about here, like in the city, you have those nice buses. You go into the outlying areas, you don't have them. I mean, like there's
or you have, like a service every couple hours.
Right,
it's not every 10 minutes. Or
right,
every
I said
minutes.
there's one time I remember when we first started, they had a debate that was in Frederick County, and they talking about mass transportation, and people are like from Baltimore, like, oh, I have to wait like 20 minutes for a bus, and I'm thinking to myself, I could go stand on the side of the road for the rest of my life and nothing's coming. That's the difference,
Yeah.
And then you have people that are like,
stack up 1,000
20 minutes in a row. Complaining. I remember, like, I actually heard this complaints. Well, Urbana built a library down there. It's like, do you realize the kids would have to walk down 355 with no sidewalks, and massive amounts of kids? How would they do that? So it's not like Urbana got a privilege because it's Urbana. It's like, theoretically, you can't have kids, and there's kids from a lot of areas that would like to go in places, like even get into Frederick to get a job or something. Like, there's just no way, that you can get into Frederick, where I am. At least if I walk a long way, I can get on a bus that may take me to Germantown, that I can transfer to, to get to Shady Grove. But again, another long process.
Certainly.
So anyway, we need mass transportation. We need lots of mass transportation.
I guess my question is, do you think that we should shift our priorities towards that? Because it seems to me that the priority is auto now, not just Frederick, just in general as a community, as a society. We think about the automobile and then the buses. Should that switch, or are we not quite there yet?
I think you're not quite there yet, and we're definitely not in the area to do it. Because I've talked about it to other people. I'm like, gosh, I wish there was a bus that I could take like on a Saturday and go into, to Frederick or something, look around, because then you don't have to worry about parking and stuff, and but that doesn't exist, so that's not even an option.
So
But we
it doesn't
can make it an
exist.
option
So
more
it doesn't
so.
exist because of funding, right? As I said, have $1 trillion, we have plenty. So let's talk about that for a second. One of the things that I've also complained to everybody that'll listen to me
right, exactly.
is that I don't feel that we are receiving the investment from the state matching the fact that we are the fastest growing. I understand that there's a lot of people other places. Montgomery County has a lot of people. Baltimore City has a lot of people.
Right.
I get that. But we are the fastest growing, and so we require the most attention and investment.
Right.
Is it a role that you see, is that the responsibility of the delegation, or is that, and by delegation I mean the state senators and
Right.
delegates, or is that a responsibility of the county government,
I think it's
the county council? Is it
I think
everybody's
it's
job?
everybody's responsibility, and even though, like, yes, that's mostly going to be falling on the state senators and stuff like that, but that doesn't mean that you don't, like, where I go, like, you do get in front of other people, and you can, keep preaching to them, like, hey, we really need this, we really need this up here. I think the more times that they hear it, it can only help us, so you have every voice directed in that, with the state senators going after the legislature, stuff that we can start building. Like I said, but, I'm one of those people, like, you got to get in your face. I got to get in your face, and I'll get in your face to, they'll start dwindling you,
Yeah, I certainly building relationships matters,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Having those relationships. So the other side of this coin is Frederick County, we have recordation tax, we have a bunch of fees and things, but we essentially fund ourselves via property taxes. That's the only way it happens, right? 80% of those property taxes come from residential properties. Only 20% come from commercial properties. That,
That's,
to me,
maybe an issue.
seems like an issue, right?
Exactly.
You have a place like Walmart where they're only paying the same per square foot dollar amount
That it
as
is.
I am paying for my home.
Right.
In fact, less because I'm in the city. So if I'm talking about well, I guess one of the Walmarts is in the city, but
Right.
the one in Guilford isn't.
Right.
And I know that because they had plastic bags, and I went, oh yeah, they're on the city. But the parking lot isn't. So they're taking up this giant piece of property, of
Right.
space that could be homes, that could be other things for the city, but it's not, and they're paying the same rate as us.
Right.
That seems to me fundamentally unfair.
Right.
The problem, of course, being that is something we have to go to the state for, and the state's only going to do it if we do it as a local privilege bill, and it's only going to happen as a local privilege bill if the entire delegation is for it.
Right.
And obviously the Democrats are for it, the Republicans aren't.
Right.
How do we convince them that this is, because to me,
How do you convince the Republicans?
that this differential between the residential property rate and the commercial property
Right.
rate,
There's a big problem.
I
with that.
just, to me, it seems so simple that we increase that a little bit for the
Right.
properties that are businesses.
Right.
But how do we? But they're against it.
I know. Yeah, they're against it. It's
Yeah.
big business is going to.
And maybe
I mean,
maybe
and
not a
it's kinda like-
solution, but it's like how, like what
You
what's
have to
the
come
first
up with
step?
your facts, and you got to lay it out for people and present it to them in ways. You start presenting facts that they can't dispute. That this needs to go in, and you have to show them. I
Yeah.
mean, how can I explain it? Like, a lot of people also have, I want to say, convenient ignorance. Why? Look, because you're afraid to mess with big business or talk to big
Yeah.
business. So.
Yeah, it just seems to me a travesty that, especially things like short-term rentals, right? That if you're taking a house out of our housing stock, so, and listen, if you live here in the county and you have one or two other properties that this is where you're storing your wealth, you've worked your whole life and you have an extra property or two,
Right.
that's not what I'm talking. I'm talking about businesses that buy 20 or 30 houses. I don't know if you know, like Ice Street downtown, where the mayor of the city used to live, is all Airbnbs now. It's all commercially owned properties. It's very few kind of a person that lives in a house that they own. They're using our infrastructure. All the money that they're collecting is leaving the community. So again, I'm not talking about the
Yep.
the couple that has their extra house or whatever that they Airbnb. I'm talking about these businesses. But we have no mechanism for saying you're using our infrastructure, you're using our beautiful creek, you're using our wonderful parks all across the county. These giant Utica, these beautiful places that are out in our beautiful county.
Right.
All of our roads, all of our water, all these things that you're using to make money.
Right.
And they're paying the same
tax rate
that we are for the people that live here. And I just...
Yep.
So
well, heck with laws have got to change. We've got to relook at things. Unfortunately, you like to I want it today.
Yeah.
It's going to take time, but you can get to that point.
Why things in the government take a long time, and unfortunately, sometimes that means that things happen and we don't really know about it, and then they pop up, right? And then you're building a house next door. I didn't know that was coming. I'm all upset about, and I'm coming and screaming at my council member, going, "What are you doing?" And your response is, well, 3 years ago, we took a vote on this thing.
We talked about this 3 years ago.
Yeah,
right, exactly.
so this kind of brings me back to that first question about, how do you cut through all that noise? I don't really know. I think it is – I think a lot of it is trust.
A lot of, yes. You got to need people that you can trust.
Yeah.
Like I said, that you trust, then you know that they're willing to do what they need to for you, Like I said, and that's something I think in a lot of my relationships, I've been able to build trust with people, that they know – that I'm out there, I'm working for them, I'm supporting them, and trying to make it better, or at least fair and equal, as much as I can. Sometimes that's a uphill principle, but yeah.
And so much of it is, it's so easy to just dismiss all politicians or all people. Right. Maybe it's we need to rebuild a culture of public service.
I could say, but sometimes I could tell you, even at work on a committee, something. If I see a wrong, I am going to be the loudest voice.
Yeah.
On the committee, it's not that I'm profiting from them in any single way, but I'm a loud voice, and I just make sure that people. It's fair for people, you know. We've had, I don't want to get into anything, but you had cases where I've had to step up and be this sound, maybe sometimes the lone voice in the room, and I am not afraid to go out and stand on my own, because if I don't think it's right, you're not getting my vote, and I will try to convince as many people.
during the city election last year, one of the questions, it was a bunch of us. A bunch of people up there, and they were asking questions about your interaction with the mayor and with the different levels of government, and people were like, well, you don't want to be annoying and all that. And I got up, I was like, I want to be annoying. I want to listen. In order to get the government to move a little bit faster, right. I don't mind sitting outside of somebody's house and blaring an air horn until they go, all right, fine, we'll fix that light or we'll fix that pothole, because that is so much of these decisions that are made, and I don't mean they're hiding it from the public, right. But it's just happening in rooms that don't have anybody in it.
Right.
I went to the health department meeting at the county. So the county health board is the council, the head of health for the county, and the executive, and all. And it's the house, and they meet and they talk, and they brought up, is Ebola? Should we be concerned about this hantavirus? These kind of things. Me and one other person are in the whole room, right? Now, maybe some people watching online. I'll give it that. Right. But so many of these decisions are happening. And so then it becomes that trust thing, because people go, well, I don't trust it because they're just making these decisions. Well, you could have gone there and said something, but they don't have the time, right? Who's got the time at 2 o'clock or 6 o'clock on a Tuesday? They're working. This brings me to the affordability thing, which is just anything everybody's talking about, is they cannot afford childcare, they cannot afford groceries, they cannot afford rent. Now with the war, they can't afford fuel for their cars. I as people move here, it's going to get worse, not better, right? So there seems to me some kind of big systemic things that need to happen, and property tax are one of them, fees, but also I think resiliency locally, I know and I apologize to anybody that's heard me say that. I keep saying this. When I grew up, this idea of go ask your neighbor for a cup of sugar, that just doesn't exist anymore. That we're not leaning on the people around us. And it seems to me that from your experience as a kid, that when you were in those rooms with your grandmother and your mother, These were not rooms of individual people
Right.
doing their own things. These
Right.
were collections of people working together towards a goal.
Right.
I guess I'm hoping we can recreate that.
And I think maybe, we can, like I said, but yeah, you got to build trust. Make sure you have leaders that trust you, that you know that you're after their best interest. Not, I'm one of those people, it may not be right for me, but if I hear majority of people need it and I get strong enough reasons, then I'm going to go for it, even though it doesn't help me personally, but it's helping people, And, I'm one of those people that, if I'm elected, I'm going to be a leader that goes around and listens to people, to hear what they have to say, not just shut myself and try to make decisions, to try to get around to as many groups and listen to see what they have to say, and you build trust in people in that way. You listen to them, and hopefully you're acting where appropriate, and beside of them, because sometimes, you can hear a lot, but you still think it's, in the best interest.
So I know you're out and about, as I said, outdoors and all the events and,
Right.
In the community. So what are you hearing? I mean, is it the affordability thing? I mean, what are you hearing?
You are hearing it. Like there was one worse person that was talking to on my job, and she's paying over $3,000 a month because she got 3 young kids, in daycare, and you're like, oh my goodness, how how are you making it? The other thing that I'm seeing, and then you look around, is
before tax. You have to earn
Right.
$45,000-$50,000.
right, and that's just going to barely make
Just
it.
for the
It's
child
really-
care.
right?
Gosh.
And that's what people are up against. People are like, I paid this much. I mean, today, yes, I was driving on fumes, but early today, I've probably put $90-something worth of gas into my car. And that, for most people, that hurts. That hurts a lot, and that's a lot of stuff that they can't do. When you look around here, and I go, which is something that I put. Do you notice the amount of stores and restaurants and things that are closing around here? Because it's just getting, not going to afford it. You also have the tariff problem that's driving up costs, and so I get very, very worried about what we're going to do, and I know we need to do something, and I'd like to be on that side that's fighting
Yeah.
for us to get back to the, I'm going to say, to the land, to the olden times that you're talking about. But I believe it can be brought back.
Like I talked about earlier, though, I don't, maybe the
it may be a little bit modified.
maybe the olden times weren't really what
As
we.
grand as you think it
Yeah,
was.
yeah. That it was, which is, and not, this is a complete rabbit trail, but when people, this whole Make America Great Again, it goes, when,
Right.
right?
We were
I'm a
great
white
to
man.
start with.
I'm a white man. There was a lot of times in our history where it was pretty good for me.
Right.
Just me, right? And
Right.
so when was it great? And I think that it is America is great because we improve ourselves, because we look at ourselves with honesty at what we have done and say, well, that we harmed those people or
Right.
this situation and that was a bad decision, or we went overseas and stuck our nose in something we shouldn't have. We did this to our own people and we're working on to improve it. And that there's all these people that are doing mutual aid and all these charities and nonprofits that are just trying to help people.
Right.
I sit on Justice Jobs, which is people that are incarcerated coming out, trying to find employment for them.
Right.
These are all wonderful things that we're all collectively trying to do. But that's what makes America great.
Right.
Not some moment in history
Right.
where a certain set of people had it better than they maybe have it now
Right.
compared to everyone else.
Right.
Not better than they have it now,
Right.
because we didn't have anything.
Right.
Every technology that comes out is better,
Like I said, yeah. And
but
like,
it was compared to somebody else that
Right.
had it better.
And then I'm like, and the selfishness, like we've been talking about, and you're putting through it. It's like, I don't understand how you watch horrors being imposed on other people, and you don't understand how that pendulum can swing in your direction. I don't get how people are like that.
This is exactly. I gave a speech at the Board of Ed about this. That we are the target now, or this person is the target now, or that group is the target now. But someday they're coming for everybody else.
Right, exactly.
Right?
It's like, yeah. And I was like, I don't understand why people don't get it. It's like, well, as long as they're fixed on that person, I don't have to pay attention. No,
Yeah, that is a dangerous perspective.
Yes,
So-
it is.
Okay, so speaking of the past,
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about a time you made a mistake and how you worked through that, or what you did. I'm just so interested on how people view that in their life. So you can say you never have. I've had people say,
Well, you know,
I've never made a mistake.
Well, it's not really. It's kind of like it's not really a mistake, and it's sometimes it's like on paper it's going to be a mistake for a little while, but it may end up being very beneficial to you later on. Like there was sometimes, you know, when I was back at NEA member benefits, and I've marketed insurance, and you know, insurance is we used to say you take paper towels and fold them up and put on your head, because when you're reading through some of that, you're just likely to fall asleep, you know, or something like that, you know. And
That's really funny.
you know, but you know, we put out a mailing that wasn't going to generate a lot of money. Like we would give away something small that people could have. But you know what? The next time they get a piece, they might look at you differently because you extended that small thing to them.
Yeah.
So on paper, it looks like a failure. You know, like it's not the great rate, but it's something that will come back to you later. Like, oh yeah, I remember, or because I had this this pen or something like that lying around with your name on it in the website. You know, that when I needed insurance, I called.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like,
As I
like I said, and you know, and my part is
people
like
can
I'm a marketer by trade, and you know, you try to make as little mistakes as possible, or you know, like I said, some not mistakes. It's like, okay, well, let's try this list, and it's like, nope, that was a bummer, that didn't work. But you know, you learn. You know, you usually learn something and move on, and that's. You know, that's what we all have to do.
Indeed. People can answer it however they want.
Exactly.
Okay, so juxtaposition to that, tell me about something you're proud of that you've done or accomplished, or something in your life that you're proud of.
I am, I would say, very proud of raising the child that I've raised. I always go, she's a formidable woman, you know. So I'm proud in the decisions that I made to help steer her on a course. That's one of the things I'm most proud of. And now it's like, when you see her being a mom and you see yourself being reflected, you know, like, oh, you okay, yeah, you know, but she got it, you know.
Which is that first passion, right? That you said from the
family.
beginning is family. I think, you know, I cannot imagine trying to go through life without, I mean, I call it family, right? The people that you choose, your friend family, you know. But the people that I call family, that I call my closest people, I can't imagine going through life without.
Like I said, you need them, you know. There's probably some other stuff that I'm passionate for, you know, like animals and stuff, but you know, we only got a certain amount of time. You know, I'm passionate about a lot of stuff.
Shelly, how do people get a hold of you?
You can go to my website. It's Shelly 4 Frederick.com. If you need to email me, it's Shelly4Frederick@gmail.com.
Also the number 4?
Yes,
yeah,
also
so
the number
Shelly,
4.
the number 4, Frederick at gmail.com.
Right. And one thing else I would like to mention, I did not. I supported the referendum. I signed the referendum, so I disagreed with the data centers at some point, because there was some going around that I was accused of taking money from developers. I don't even know the developers to take the money from, so no, I haven't done that.
Okay. As I said, you can use the time, whatever else you want to say.
That was about it.
No,
that was
any
about it.
Any grudges you want to get out or anything?
I won't do the grudges here now. No. You know, I mean, it was funny. I believe, and I think when you do this, people are basically good. There's some wicked ones in there, but for the majority, there's a lot of good people out there. They're just trying to get through their lives, you know, as best that they can.
I really think that, especially this cycle, that there are a bunch of people that really care, that really want to see Frederick better. I mean, I love this place so much. You know, I've tattooed on me. I love Frederick so much, and I just think that we have too much. We are too blessed. We have too many resources. We have too many opportunities here that everyone shouldn't have access to it.
Right. And like I say, and you got to realize there's a fight every day. Every day, even if you don't think there's a fight, you know, every day to keep what we have special here. Yeah. You know, we've got to do that.
Shelly, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.